Hello everyone, welcome to my ultimate guide to Miguel in Tekken 7. Ultimate in the sense that I want it to be good and I want to talk about as much as possible, but it's also ultimate in the sense that it's probably the last time I'm going to get to do Miguel guide content for this version of the game. My first Miguel guide was my first ever video, and it's been a long journey with this game and this character. We know that Tekken 8 is on the way, but we will be playing this game for quite a lot longer, and if you ever wanted to learn Miguel, I want this video to have everything you need to do well. It's going to have kind of a loose structure because that's the way I like to do these. I have a bunch of pages of notes, I have a hot drink, and I'm just going to go through it all essentially in one take, so wish me luck. But enough introing, we have a lot to talk about. Let's just jump in with the character, right? Let's get right into it. Now the first thing I think you should worry about when you start learning Miguel is actually your key bindings. And I used to be kind of down on key bindings in my earlier videos because I didn't like the idea of using shortcuts for inputs in a game where you have to worry a lot about practicing and learning difficult inputs. But I've warmed up to them since, and I think with some characters like Miguel, they can actually be very important. Now, the really important one that I recommend that you do is find a button that you like and bind 3+4 to it. I use R2 on my PlayStation 4 DualShock 4 controller, and this is manual Savage Stance. The reason this is so important is it's a stance transition that is manual that you use a lot, which is kind of rare, but the move that you want to access most of the time when you transition manually is this Savage Down Back 3. It's a very important move and a key to the character. But if you think about it, the manual transition is 3+4, and then the input for the low is down back 3. And what that means is that you have to press 3+4 and then let go, and then press the 3 button for the low. And that tiny window of time where you're letting go and pressing again is essentially completely wasted time, and it makes your low slower. And you want your lows to be as fast as possible, right? But if you have a dedicated Savage button, you can let the whole input flow. You can be inputting the down back 3 as soon as your Savage button is pressed, and it makes the whole thing so much faster that when you get good at this, at doing these instant Savage down back 3s, you can do it fast enough that the stance isn't even visible, and it's really great, right? Because this low, you can use it essentially if you do that fast enough as a low poke, but it's also an Oki tool. You know, you use it to chase people on the ground. It's just a fantastic move overall. I also have my 2+3 bound to my L1, and the reason I have that is because you have this pretty great bull rush move, and because I play on a PlayStation controller, 2 and 3 are oriented kind of awkwardly to press at the same time, because they're completely vertical. So with the grip I use, it can be a bit awkward, so I prefer to just have a dedicated 2+3 button, but this is entirely up to you. If you play on stick, you know, probably won't be an issue because the buttons are oriented in a slightly more ergonomic way, right? But no matter what controller you use, I really do recommend that you get yourself a manual dedicated Savage button, because it's going to make the stance a lot faster, which is very good. So now that we've talked about that, let's think a little bit about what kind of a character Miguel is. What's our goal when we're playing him? You know, what are we trying to achieve? And I think with Tekken characters, there's sort of a design intent from the developers. So for example, with Gigas, he's supposed to be the character that is scary to block against because he has good throws and these charge up moves that give him a bunch of block stun. And then you have the emergent way that the character is actually effectively played in, right? So with Miguel, I think what Namco want you to do with him is essentially constantly force the Savage mix-up. And you see this across his design, you see it in the changes that they've brought to the character over the years. But I think Miguel, even more importantly, is a very good poking character, right? And you've probably heard that said before, but he has amazing pokes, especially lows. He has some of the best low pokes in the game, right? He also has very good movement, especially for a big character. His sidestep is good. He has one of the best backdashes in the entire game. He really travels when he backdashes, right? So he's more of a mobile poking character who excels at close to sort of mid-range. And then he's kind of weak when you have a lot of space, right? And that's why I think it's important that you don't over-rely on this backdash. Just because the backdash is good, that doesn't mean that you should constantly be creating space with him, because odds are, when there's a bunch of space, your opponent's character is actually better at that than Miguel is, right? If you're playing against Kunimitsu, you want to be as close to her as possible. When you're far away, she's way better at that than you are, right? So at the tip of your long-range pokes, you're the strongest, but also in the very close range, you're pretty good as well, especially because of that great sidestep. So you're sort of a movement-based poking character. You're tying things together with movement, poking a lot, and then trying to sometimes set up bigger things and capitalize with huge damage. You throw a lot of hop kicks with Miguel. His hop kick is good, not super fantastic, but it is a good hop kick, and he's kind of a combo specialist. He gets huge damage for his combos, and he has great Oki. So it kind of makes sense just economically to sometimes gamble on the hop kick, or throw it when you have the feeling, the sense, the read that it will hit, because the risk-reward ratio is just kind of in your favor. You're happy to eat the occasional 12 or 13 frame block punisher for the huge reward you get when you do hit with this. So throwing a clutch hop kick is sort of at the back of your mind the whole time as well, right? And you're moving around, you're poking, you're trying to set up stuff, and you are forcing that savage mix-up a lot as well, which is really good. And then your weakness, like I said, when there's a lot of space, you're not great on the approach. You tend to be kind of linear, and I also think you struggle in terms of keep out, right? So if you're playing the Mishima matchup, for example, it's going to be very difficult, and I think one of your main goals is going to be to actually stay close to the opponent and not over-rely on that backdash. So the backdash is good, but it's not something you do all the time. More important to poke, do one backdash, and look for, an opportunity than to just create space all the time. And I think you should sidestep a lot with him. If you don't do that a lot already, you're going to find out that it's just a great thing for him, sidestep, poke, sidestep, hop kick. Classic Miguel, right? Okay. Let's start talking about the actual move list. And I think if we want to understand Miguel, we want to start with his low pokes, because like I said, they're like his most powerful aspect, right? So let's start with down back 3. This is, in my opinion, Miguel's best move, bar none, and one of the best low pokes in the entire game. If you don't know how this low works already, I think it's going to blow your mind as I explain it, because it is just ridiculously fantastic. So, first of all, range is really great for a low poke. You can tell that it hits from way out here, which is great. It doesn't have high crush, which is the one downside to it, but it doesn't really matter. And then one great thing about the move is, first of all, it has an extension, down back 3-4, non-natural. This is launch punishable, so very risky, but you use it kind of like a cheeky round ender, or just you throw it out very rarely to keep your opponent guessing. You want to mix up your options. You never want your opponent to know what's going to happen next, right? So just the fact that it exists is pretty good. It's also used in some very specific situations as a wall conversion tool. And when opponents are trying to get off the ground, especially at the wall, you can get both of these hits guaranteed for quite a bit of damage. So it has a couple of niches, but it is really niche. But the down back 3 by itself is just amazing. Now, as you can tell, this move is going to give you +4 on hit. And why is that so crazy? Well, in Tekken, you typically don't get a lot of frame advantage for hitting with a fast low poke. It's not something that Tekken characters are supposed to do, because low pokes are kind of like the chip damage in Tekken, You can't just crouch randomly in this game, because mids become too powerful and they launch you guaranteed. So when you do a low poke, you should expect it to hit. You do it with assuming that it's going to hit every time. Sometimes you are going to get blocked, sometimes you are going to get parried, but for the most part, low pokes just connect in this game. And that essentially means that you have +4 frame advantage on demand with this character from a really long range, and it's just so good. But it gets even better because you hold forward and Miguel goes into savage stance after this low. Low poke into advantageous stance mix-up is like super powerful in this game. You find it on some of the best characters, and when they do have it, it tends to be some of the most oppressive stuff that they do. Leroy down 3-2, for example. Don't know if that is equally as effective now that he's been nerfed really hard, but it used to be this tyrannical thing that he could do. So this is really great. Now, if you have, I should mention this, by the way, a really great thing about learning Miguel, right, is that whenever you transition into Savage, you always do it the same way. It's holding forward after a move, and he kind of leans into the stance. But you also always have the same frame data if you go into the stance as when you stay out, which makes it a lot easier to remember and learn this character compared to, for example, Zafina. With Zafina, you have different frame data when you transition compared to when you don't. So you have to learn both, and it doubles the amount of numbers you have to memorize. But with Miguel, I hit, I'm +4. If I go into stance, I'm also +4, right? So it's the same, which is great. So you can get +4 in Savage off the low poke. Fantastic, right? And when you're in Savage, back 1 right here is an uninterruptible mid. It's going to, trade with 10 frame moves at this advantage, and it is really powerful. It has a natural extension. You also have, your Savage down forward 1. So +4, what I'm trying to say is enough to make this stance dangerous. So it makes this low poke like one of the most amazing pressure tools you could ever ask for, and you apply it all the time. You do it, you step, you do it again, you do it down forward 1. This is just an amazing move, and I think it's one of the best low pokes in the game, and Miguel's best move, like, by far. It's amazing. So great stuff. I'm also going to mention that it's one of the best counter hit setup tools that you have, and Miguel has good counter hits. This back 1, is 11 frames. It's an 11 frame high, right? So if you hit with the down back 3 and you go straight into this, it's completely uninterruptible, and a lot of people just get counter hit by this really easily. You can obviously go into uninterruptible fast mids like down forward 1 as well. But yeah, this thing is like so good. I'm completely over reliant on it when I play the character, but I think that's kind of intentional, he needs it and whatever. Next, let's talk a bit about down 3. Another very important, very good move. Much slower at 21, so it's kind of, nibbling at the underscruff of C ability. But the reason this move is so important, and the reason you would use it over down back 3, is that the range is pretty extreme, which is great. But if you look at the frame data display where it says standing, and then look when I do the move, it really quite quickly goes to crouching, and then it stays crouching for a really long time. Remember how I said Miguel is kind of weak against, on the approach, long range. He's bad at keep out, he's weak against keep out. This move becomes so important, specifically in the Mishima matchup, because if they are keeping you out and trying to keep you at the tip of that electric, there's very few things you can do as Miguel, but what you can do is go into sort of mid-range and throw this low, and you're actually going to crush the electric throughout the entire animation, which means that if they come in, you score a little hit right here. It's nothing massive, it's +1, but it's enough that you can then transition into a while standing move. You can start moving. You can move in and try and stay close, and now you've sort of broken down that fence and barrier and gotten closer. You have something to deal with those strong keep out highs. It's really important for that, even though it's just a 15 damage +1 low poke. It's also very good for harassing opponents at range. So if I'm out here, a lot of characters don't have great tools that can reach at this range. So I can keep applying the down 3 from out here and just racking up a lot of damage. And in some matches, I do this like 5 or 6 times per round. And it's going to, be a lot of damage at that point. So it's really good for that as well. Collect that little +1, maybe stay in crouch, do something down here if you feel like it, It's up to you. It's your choice. Marco Pierre White. But there you go. Fantastic low poke, right? Next, let's talk a bit about down back 4. The reason you would use this move over the others is that it's got superior tracking, in my opinion. It tracks kind of well to both sides. It has good range, no high crush, but it has counter hit properties, and it gives you a guaranteed stomp for 40, which is pretty big. You can also do a pancake flip with your steel pedal right here, which is really great as well. But that's the main reason you would use this low poke, right? So they're all really good. Now, how bad are they on block, right? Because that's really important. Well, for the first two that I mentioned, this thing and this thing, you're only minus 12, which is fantastic, right? You really want your low pokes to be minus 12 or less, because once they're minus 13, you're dealing with launchers in some very common matchups, like Kazuya, for example. The down back 4 is minus 14, so Kazuya can launch it, Miguel can launch it, a bunch of characters can, so it's quite a lot riskier, and I think it makes it a worse move than the first two that I mentioned. Another low poke that I'm going to throw in here is the down 4. This is minus 11. The reason you would use this is that it has kind of extreme range again, but it's also the fastest out of the moves. It's 16 frames, so when you just want to score like a really quick hit or like a round ending hit, or like catch the opponent before they backdash out of a situation, collect this plus minus 0, you know, it's really good. The down back 4, by the way, is plus 2. So you can tell that most of your low pokes, they have great range, great frame rate and properties, and they all give you advantage or are neutral on hit. So it's just really good. So you kind of open up stuff with low pokes with this character, right? The final low poke we need to talk about, I'm going to have a sip of coffee here, is the Savage down back 3. Remember how I said earlier that you really want to have a manual Savage button to access this fast. If you're good at it, you can apply this move as a low poke. And this is a low that has the best aspects of all the lows I've mentioned so far. It's got the best range out of all of them. I mean, look at this range. This is ridiculous, right? Being able to threaten with lows from this distance. It's amazing. It's got really high damage. It's got tracking. And it's got the counter hit properties of the down back 4, right? And you can get the stomp and everything. So it's kind of the best of all worlds right here. What a fantastic move. And again, use it for Oki, harassing from a range similar to the down 3. It's like the complete package. But the downside is that you do have to access the stance to be able to do the move, right? And that is why you want to do that as fast as possible. And this low is minus 13 as well. So again, dangerous in some matchups, and maybe stay out of stance more often and rely more on the down back 3 in those matchups. But great move. Use it a lot. Try and stay out of their effective range, tip range, and hit with this. Score counter hits. Use it for Oki. It's really good. So that's going to be it for your different low pokes. So I've mentioned, just a couple of moves, but you can tell that they're all so good, and I think it's really where you want to start learning the character, understanding these moves, and then knowing what you want to do straight after, because it's kind of where everything begins for Miguel, in my opinion. It's not the down forward one, like most people think, but the next thing we are going to talk about is the down forward one, because now I want to talk about pokes that aren't lows, the poking stuff that you do when you're attacking the head and torso, basically. Down forward one is like a famous move for Miguel. He's been known for having a great down forward one in like multiple versions of this game. And it's kind of average in my opinion. This late in Season 4, it's plus 5, minus 2. And you can find better frame data than that on down forward ones in this game. I think Katarina's essentially is better than this, but it is a good down forward one. It's got kind of classic and easy to apply extensions, and it's got sort of above average range for a mid poke. So it is very good, and you do it a lot. It's one of your main ways to access Savage. You use it for combos, all kinds of things. You throw this move all the time. So let's talk about the extensions. You have down forward 1-1. This is natural for 25 damage. You get plus 5 and Savage. So kind of the same situation as when you just hit with the regular down forward one by itself. This extension here is a duckable high, which is important. Some good fast players will duck this, so you have to mix up your options and extensions to keep them guessing, so that they're never comfortable doing that, right? Then you have the down forward 1-1-2, and you can add this cheeky counter hit mid at the end. It's minus 12 on block, but it is a counter hit launcher, so the way you use it is you throw it sometimes to try and catch people who are trying to take a turn after down forward 1-1, right? to make them respect the first two hits even more and make your poking game more oppressive when you're just stepping around and poking a lot with these moves, right? You also have the down forward 1-1-3, which is a -12 low extension. Not super useful. I use it rarely, but again, if you throw it once in a while, your opponent is never going to be confident in, you know, their reads. They don't know what you're going to do, and so they're going to hesitate more, and when they're standing around hesitating, that's when you can move around and do a lot of oppressive stuff to them, right? The 3 right here has a Savage extension, which I don't think I've ever used, but, you know, it's there. I don't know how good it is. I would have to try and apply it first, but it is there. You also have a mid extension to the down forward one itself. This is down forward 1-2. This is natural, so it works as a 13 frame block punisher for 30 damage. It's -12 on block again. Easy to remember frame data because it's very sort of, you know, connected with this character. But -12, so it's that classic Tekken dichotomy of, do you want to do a safe but duckable high or a punishable mid? And the answer is you should do both, because you want the opponent to not get hard reads on you, right? This move has counter hit properties, and you can get again, manual Savage, really important so you can get it fast, but you can get a guaranteed 46 damage with manual Savage 2. You can also get down 1+2 for 43 or Bull Rush for 43. And the reason you would do that is sometimes that Savage is kind of hard to get out fast enough. You have to be really quick to get it, but it's not too hard. So those are the options that you do have. And the counter hit, I didn't think it was great, but I've actually had some matches where it's given me a lot of mileage. You know, people who really want to swing after down forward 1 are going to get massacred by that. So it's really pretty good. So that's your down forward 2 string, very similar to Negan, very classic Tekken. You know, you have a lot of down forward strings that function a little bit like this. So it's nothing super, you know, out of the ordinary, except for the fact, I guess, that Miguel has that Savage stance and can get into it off of these moves, right? So it's basically the core of your poking game. You use that along with your jabs, and that's essentially, you know, the majority of your poking package, if you're not talking about lows. But I also want to mention the down forward 3-2 right here. Fantastic move. The reason you would use this over like a down forward one is that you have more range. It's called kind of extreme range. It's also mid and safe on block, which is kind of rare in Tekken because it's just really good to have a mid string that's safe on block. It basically means that there's no downside really to the string, except that you kind of lose your turn at -6. So at this range, you can sort of see the picture emerging of Miguel being a very effective poking character when he's at this sort of mid-range where, you know, this reaches and this reaches, and the Savage 2 reaches, and it pokes like, you know, down forward 3-2 reach as well. He's very, very good at the tip range of these moves, and he's also kind of good when he's really close. So he either wants to have a bit of space or no space, but when he has a lot of space, then he's less comfortable. So yeah, that's basically it for this string. It's just a natural 25 damage mid string with extreme range that works really well. I'm also going to mention quickly that you have the down forward 4 here, and the reason you would use this for a mid poke is really only the fact that it tracks to the opposite side of your down forward 1. This tracks to Miguel's right, whereas down forward 1 follows them to the left, which means that if they're trying to step your down forward pokes a lot, you can catch them with this instead. So it kind of works for that. And it has a couple of extensions that I don't really use. You know, the first one here is natural but duckable. It's kind of similar to this, really. The down forward 1 string is kind of mirrored in the down forward 4 string, right? But there you go. But that's like a quick little poke that you can use +4, and it tracks to the side that down forward 1 doesn't, which gives it, you know, niche application. But that's basically it for like your main poking mids. You tie them together with jabs and movement and your fantastic low pokes, and the core of the character is starting to emerge, right? I'm also going to mention in this section that you do have a fantastic fast homing move in the shape of back 2-2. This has been heavily buffed and it's very good now. 16 frames to impact, homing high mid, completely safe on block, which is really good at -7. And when you get the hit, it forces crouch. When you get the counter hit, it becomes a launcher. So this is like kind of crazy good in a lot of ways. It doesn't have huge range, but it's okay. But in some matchups, you will need a fast close-up homing move to be able to do well. For example, Lily, right? Now, Lily likes to step into crush moves, which makes the fact that this is a high kind of risky. You would maybe prefer something like Lars's back 1 or Kazumi's back 2, but the fact that the extension, which you usually commit to, is a mid and has that counter hit property, kind of saves it in those situations. If she's stepping into a Matterhorn, you can blow that Matterhorn up with this, right? So it's really a good move that you should keep in mind sometimes in some matchups in your close range package as well. You do have other homing moves, but they are slower and more long range. This is like, the main thing for when you're up close. Right, so we talked about low pokes, we talked about other pokes. Let's talk a little bit about your jab string, because it is really important for Miguel, despite the fact that it's known for having shitty range and being kind of shitty. But you use it a lot, You always want to poke a lot with most poking characters, or with all characters. It's just a good way to open up offense. It's the fastest stuff you have. It's how you take turns. +8 on hit is fantastic. +1 on block, not bad either. So the 1-2 is block punisher, 19 damage. The only thing that is good about it is that the second hit, because it spins around like that, has pretty good tracking, which can be cool. Again, bad range, so keep that in mind. You kind of want to dash in before you do it, or step into it and stuff. And then you have extensions here. The 1-2-4 is a duckable high that gives you +3 and savage on block, which is really good. On hit, it knocks the opponent down and gives you a guaranteed savage 2. So basically my recommendation would be, when you're using this for extension, you can pretty much commit to the savage every time, and it's going to be good. If you block, you can do savage stuff. If you get the hit, you can collect that savage too. If you don't go into savage, you can still do it manually after this, or do your other easier to collect options after that knockdown situation. So it's pretty good, even though it's kind of risky. The other extension is the 1-2-1+2, which is a slow wind up plus on block force crouch counter hit mid. So it's got a bunch of great properties, and the launch here is really massive. The downside being that it is very, very slow and sort of interruptible, right? So again, you have to mix up your options here. Now, if the 1-2 by itself here gets blocked, dick jabs or down jabs are going to option select both of these extensions, which means that a really good opponent is going to know that and just go straight for some other fast low crushing move or a down jab when they block the 1-2. But if the 1-2 connects and they try and do some sort of interruption, the 4 is actually going to be fast enough that it catches them and knocks them down for really big damage. Let's actually record this situation and show it to you, because I think it is kind of important, right? So let's record Miguel doing 1-2-4 right here, right? And then I'm going to let the string, I'm going to have the string be blocked. Obviously I can, alright, you have to do down 1 for dick jabs with Miguel, by the way. Right there, you can tell I'm going to interrupt that with the dick jab. And some characters have, powerful extensions to dick jabs, which makes this even more dangerous. But if I get hit, I don't have time to do the dick jab right here. It's going to catch me and knock me down and give him great damage, right? So the situation is different depending on whether or not the jab string connects, obviously, right? So keep that in mind. Just know that it's very, very dangerous, the extensions, when the jabs hit, but you're in a completely different world against a good player when your jabs are getting blocked. And I would say hit the brakes quite often then. Because you're taking a risk right there. The 1+2 is slow enough that it can get all kinds of counter hit, and this thing can obviously be ducked. And both options can be option selected against. So there you go. But the jab string is important. It's okay. You dash in and do it. You step into it. You step after it. And you tie it together with the low pokes and the mid pokes that we've talked about already. And now you're essentially playing Miguel, and everything else is savage and combos, basically. But bunch more stuff to talk about, so let's go into the next section. What do I have in my notes next? Okay, so I want to talk about long range tools, right? I mentioned that it's not your strong suit. You're not great at keep out, you're not great at closing the gap, really, but you have some important stuff. Tends to be linear, tends to be risky, but here we go. First of all, I want to mention the Bull Rush. This is one of my favorite moves with Miguel. It is risky and linear, but it can also be very good. It has this kind of long, meaty activation or active window, which tricks a lot of people. He crushes highs on the way in. It got tiny bit of tracking, but it can be stepped and walked. But it also has pretty dangerous frame data. So when this gets blocked, it's going to be -7 close range, but it can actually be as much as +2 at the very tip. That's the riskiest range to try and apply it, because your opponent has so much time to move out of the way. But you can actually, at a long range, have it be blocked and go straight into a counter hit tool like an 11 frame back one and have that work. Excuse me. So it is very good, you know. You try and trick people when you think they are about to like move in and start attacking. You throw it, and you can knock people down, get wall splats. It's really good, right? So it also, yeah, I sometimes use it for Oki, because if your opponent is completely grounded, of course, it's not going to catch them. But if they're rolling on the ground and trying to get up, it catches a bunch of options. So you can like launch somebody, spin, you spike them, and then you rush in with this. And as they're getting up, you get a giant chunk of damage. So you can apply it for a long-range Oki tool as well. And the move is always completely safe as long as you're not being evaded. So that's super great, right? Next, we need to talk about the forward 2 string. Another like key and classic Miguel move. Dangerous, but potentially, for you, I mean, but also potentially very powerful. So 4-4-2-1, you have a bunch of high crush on the way in. You're impacting very fast at long range. The one extension is natural for 41 damage. This wall splats, it's just, you know, a giant chunk. So you can use it for a fast whiff punish. It works for that if you're fast enough. And it's great when you're able to do that, but you have to be like good, you know. But then you also have a mid extension. So the high extension right here is duckable, which is very dangerous if the opponent blocks the first hit. And that's why you sometimes throw the mid extension, and you catch them ducking, right? And if you saw my recent Miguel gameplay clip that I uploaded, probably the last video on this channel, I managed to get a promotion simply because my opponent was trying to hard read the high, ducked, and got hit by the mid. So, you know, you do that as well. The mid is also natural, by the way. So both versions of the string are natural. So that's pretty great. Now the mid extension is of course block punishable at -13. So again, it's like the down forward 1 string. Do you want the duckable high or the punishable mid? You have to pick your poison. But the mid extension also, the 4-4-2-2 this is, also has a cancel. So you can press down to cancel, and it's going to allow you to go into crouch. Now this is only good for like mental and plastic advantage. I do a lot of setups with this, but I'm sort of creating the situation. It doesn't really exist. What I mean is basically the frame data doesn't allow you for any kind of mix or anything here. If you get the hit and you go in, it's -8. If you get blocked and you go in, you're -24. So what's happening here most of the time is the opponent, they are expecting an extension to the 4-4-2. They see that you go into crouch, they get confused for a little bit, they try and press something, and then you're hop kicking, or you're doing something from full crouch, or you're just doing a fast while standing one and collecting a fantastic +8, maybe savage mixing. So it's like a mental frame sort of situation. It's a tricky little tool. And like with your down forward 1 and everything else, you want to keep them guessing. You want to do different things all the time. So I think this is pretty good. And I do use it, but just be aware that if your opponent is like, if they know Miguel and they know that they don't have to be scared of this, they could just like launch you for trying to apply it. Another weakness of the cancel is that the high extension right here is of course duckable. And if the opponent ducks, and as a while standing launcher expecting the high, when you're sitting here in crouch, that while standing launcher, if it's mid, is just going to launch you. So, you know, they don't even have to like guess right to launch you here sometimes. They can guess wrong and get a full combo. So it does work and it's pretty good, but it's also, you know, kind of risky and weird. But I think it's pretty cool. Down 3 we mentioned, long range tool, keep out tool. You can use it to break down or get in on keep out characters. I think it's really good for that, but we already talked about this move. Now you have your Magic 4. Some Miguel players love the Magic 4. I don't. I don't think it's magic at all. I think it's a mundane 4. I'm not a fan of it, and I almost never apply it. But some good Miguel players do, and they do it very successfully. So this is going to come down to your playstyle and how you feel about the move. So it's a 12 frame long range counter hit high. It comes out at a weird angle, and the combo you get is not necessarily fantastic. You can do stuff like this and get around 60. So it's not amazing, and I think back one is so much better in most situations. 1 frame faster, more reliable in every way, better combo. The only reason you would apply this is for the range, but even then, I don't think it's great. It's got a weird angle to the leg where you can tell that it's sort of wonky, the hitbox of it. I don't love it. Some people do. Some people, get stuff. But essentially, if you're going to combo after it, you also have to do a really quick counter hit confirm into Cyclone Slap, which is 4-4-2. And that counter hit confirm can also be kind of tight and difficult. So sometimes you're swinging at the air right here, and you're getting launched as your opponent wakes up. So, I don't think it's great, but it belongs in this section, so that's why I'm talking about it. Next, up forward 1. This move, on the other hand, is fantastic. So it's a really long-range jumping mid-attack that gives you advantage on block +4 and a Savage Transition, the same +4 that you're comfortable using because you're applying so many down back 3s like I've taught you, right? When this hits normally, you can go into Savage and you can collect a guaranteed Savage down 4-2. Now the thing with this guaranteed Savage down 4-2 is that it is pretty consistent. It doesn't look like it right now. I think that's because we're practicing against specifically Miguel. But sometimes it will just completely whiff like this. But in most matchups, in most situations, you will actually get it. So don't worry about the fact that it's whiffing so much right here. I think it has to do with Miguel's idle animation and this leaning that he does. It is not 100% consistent, but pretty consistent, and it is very good damage and just a fantastic pressure tool. It gets blocked, you get Savage and advantage, you knock down and hit with it, you get damage as well. It's just really good. And the Savage down back too is a pancake flip move, so the post situation Oki is good as well. So this move is great. It also wall splats, so it's good for a pressure tool at the wall. Its one weakness again is that it has that classic Miguel linearity on the approach, right? But it's kind of low hitting and chunky now, and I actually sometimes use it for Oki as well. If I'm running in and applying pressure post combo near the wall, if the opponent gets up wrong and gets hit by this, look, it doesn't look like it will, but it does consistently give you wall splats. So really great little move as well. Keep it in mind. You also have 4-4-3. Now this move is sort of situational and rarely used by Miguel players because it feels slow and clunky. It's high, but I think it has niche application, if for no other reason than that it's extremely fun to use and hit with, because safe on block, it's a homing move, so that's good, although it is a high, but it's also a normal hit launcher and one of the highest damage single hit moves that you have. So you're just going with this massive kick, and it's 28 on the first hit, and then you dash up and you can do powerful combos. It spins on the first hit, but you still get fantastic damage here. So you can throw this sometimes and it will work. You can also use it post wall break. If you need to post wall break spin, but you've done a long combo before the wall break, your 2-hit spin moves like this and might whiff because of the increased pushback in the combo. But you can throw this really quickly and get a massive 1-hit spin move when you need it. So it's pretty good for that as well. I like it. I don't apply it a lot, but sometimes I do when opponents are walking a lot at range, and when you hit with it, or you hit somebody who's coming in with it, it's just a lot of fun and it feels really great. So this would be like my sort of recommended package for Miguel in terms of long range tools and gap closers and keep out. But I think for the most part, what you're trying to do really is get in here and start poking, maybe apply one of these and then try and get in right away. Do one of these, maybe sidestep, or apply something like an up forward one and collect some advantage, and then try and stay close and mix. You you're not in love with lots of space, in my opinion, at all. It's not your thing. You have a slash kick. It's a weird slash kick. It's got a lot of wind up, but it's big. It's got damage. It's got advantage on block. But you know about slash kicks if you play a lot of Tekken. So now that we've talked about like that, I think it's sort of natural to talk a bit about whiff punishment next, right? And another reason that I think Miguel shouldn't over-rely on his fantastic backdash is the fact that his whiff punishment is decent but not super good. And I think he's more comfortable launching, after a sidestep and a whiff more than he is like creating space out here and whiff punishing. But whiff punishing is always going to be a big part of Tekken, and you have some pretty important tools. Now I think the main thing is going to end up at the end of the day being the hop kick. The range on this isn't fantastic, but it's reliable, it's good enough, and it's like your standard launcher that you're using all the time anyway. The hop kick is great for Miguel. I do recommend you don't worry too much about you shouldn't completely gamble and hallelujah hope kick, but if you feel like it might hit, try it out and try and work up an instinct for when that's going to work. I think one of the reasons my Miguel has been doing so well lately is I throw quite a few hop kicks, but they tend to pretty much always connect, right? So it's about learning when it's time to place them, right? And if you look at, world-class Miguel masters like Sephi Black, he actually throws a lot of those hop kicks as well. And it's like magic. How come it connects every time? It's because you've worked up an instinct and a sense for when it's time to use them, right? You're not gambling. You are throwing them when you think they're going to counter hit or your opponent's going to do a low or something like that, when you have a read or a gut feeling at least. Your other good whiff punishers are the down for 2-1. This is 16 frames, so quite a bit slower, or 1 frame slower, but that matters for whiff punishment. And the reason you would use this is it has superior range and a bit more damage than the hop kick. So it's like the dedicated, intended whiff punishing launcher for the character. I think it's a little bit awkward. It doesn't have massive range. It's 16 frames, which is kind of slow, and it's launch punishable on block. So, use with caution, right? Other good options is you can use your Cyclone Slap forward 4-2. Great range, mid, homing. 17 frames, so kind of slow, but the range kind of makes up for that. It actually gives you a pretty good Oki situation if you manually Savage and you can reach with down back 3 after it, which I think I've never had anybody block. So, a pretty good setup right there. You can also do Savage down 4-2. This move is something that I think a lot of people are scared to apply. I use it quite a lot, and I get a lot of mileage out of it. Again, it's about knowing when to use it. So if I'm moving around out here, and then I sometimes just go into Savage, and then I go back out and move around a little bit more, and then I go into Savage. If I happen to be in Savage and my opponent does something or is trying to approach me, I can fly in with this. I have massive, massive range, crazy high crush. So it's high risk, high reward, massive launcher. The range is crazy, the damage is crazy. Hitting with this feels amazing. It also, again, hits on the ground, so you can use it for Oki, right? But just as a whiff punishing tool, you have to be in Savage. But if you are fast and you have that manual Savage button, it's fast enough that it works. And if somebody's coming in with highs, you sneak under them, you score this. If they're jabbing, you go under that. It really works for whiff punishment. But I think specifically for Oki, this thing becomes amazing. So one thing that I like to do with Miguel is I will knock my opponent down, and then as I run in, I try and make it look like I'm going to go in and apply close range Oki, but then I stay at the tip range of get up kicks, like kind of here. And if they do a get up 4, a get up 3, or they stay on the ground, I blow that up for a massive launch, whiff punishing with this. And if they stay on the ground, I get grounded damage and the pancake flip. So it's just a really great Oki tool as well. This move is fantastic. Launch punishable, of course, but the pushback kind of saves it. A lot of people do launch punish this when you apply too much, but a lot of people also don't, and you can get away with murder with this move. Don't be too scared to apply it, just similar to the hop kick. Try and work up a sense for when it's time to use it. I think it's really quite good. And when you're at the end of the round, maybe you're in rage, you're about to lose, your opponent has a lot of HP left, You shouldn't gamble and panic, but throwing one of these with precision can turn the entire round around, especially if you have rage and get all that extra damage off of it. So I think this move is great, and I think even though it has been nerfed in terms of its pushback, and it's just kind of a pale imitation of Heihachi 442 at this point, it has its niche, and I actually kind of love it. Don't underestimate it. I'm just going to mention here, while we are talking about whiff punishment, that you also have the forward 1+2. I don't use this for whiff punishment. You've probably never seen me do it, but again, it's a move that some really good Miguel players use for that. And I was talking to Sephi Black one time, and I'm like, how do you whiff punish with Miguel post like backdash? And he said that one of his favorite options was this thing. 14 frames high, decent but not massive range, but it gives you that knockdown legs in the air situation that Miguel likes, where he can get the manual Savage 2 if you're fast, or the Bull Rush or the down 1+2. So it's a situation that occurs throughout Miguel's move list. But I'd say that's basically it for whiff punishment, unless we're going to mention Savage 2 by itself. Massive range and damage. It does require you to manually transition. And I'm thinking now that it's probably like the most used manual stance transition in the game, because you really want to access these moves. You wish you had them all the time. So you try and like jump into the stance randomly almost every once in a while, look at the opponent and then go, oh, it's time to apply these fantastic moves. Now, I want to talk about other key moves that we haven't mentioned so far that are important for Miguel. And it's not like I'm mentioning a couple of situational bits and pieces here. Some of these moves that I'm going to mention now are like some of the most important that he has. They just didn't fit into a specific section so far. But I'm going to start with back one. We've talked a bit about it before, but it's just an extremely fast 11 frame counter hit high, massive launcher, very, very good. It's good when you're creating these situations with a little bit of advantage, right? To go straight into, but it's also how you get rush down people off you a lot. If you're being rushed down by these really fast characters and you're able to find these small windows, blow them up. Negan is doing back 1+2 into another back 1+2 or something slow like that, blow him up. Huarong, blow him up. It's fantastic. Those few characters in the game that have these 11 frame counter hit highs, if you've used them before, you know how fantastic it feels to hit with them and how important they can be in some matchups. It's safe on block, by the way, at -9, so not too dangerous to apply, and just use it. Throw it when you're being pressured, throw it when you have a bit of advantage or a little bit of disadvantage, and watch them explode. Fantastic move. Next, up forward 3-2-2, the biggest scrub killing move that the character has, apart from maybe down back 1. This thing is massive, and if you watch my gameplay, you know that I rely on this a lot when I'm playing online. You shouldn't do it too much, but it can give you just massive damage sometimes. So the way it works is upward 3-2-2. It's a mid, high, mid, and it's safe on block at -6. And it forces crouch. So the only big risk that you take is that the second hit right here, the high, can be ducked. But you have to be like very fast to do that, right? So some people I play against, I played a lot against Talon, the really strong competitive player from the UK, and he's obviously practiced this because he ducks this on reaction pretty much every time. But that's very rare, and most people don't. Most people just block the whole thing, or they get counter hit. So if you get a counter hit with the first hit right here, the whole thing becomes natural. It's 53 damage. You're forcing crouch at +5 after here. It's just so dangerous and so much damage. And with rage, it's even worse. So it's kind of like, a move that you throw near the end of the round when you just need big damage. But one of the reasons you tend to get the counter hit as well, specifically on the second hit, which gives you the third, is that people think that this is a hop kick. They see the animation, they're not able to discern the fact that Miguel is kicking with the other leg. He's not doing up forward 4, he's doing up forward 3. And that means that they think, oh, I blocked a hop kick, it's time to do, take my turn, or block punish, of course. And they swing, and then they eat subsequent hits, right? So it's very, very good in a bunch of situations. You can use it to break floors. You can use it as a really high damage wall combo as well, actually, especially if you delay the final hit like that and get the 50% scaling on it. But it's just a really good and safe and high damage, fantastic counter hit tool. But you have to be careful against good opponents who are good at ducking the second hit. Even then, they will do it rarely. They will very rarely do it the first time you apply it. But the second and the third, you have to start to be careful, right? You can use it for a little bit of keep out and just, as a counter tool as well. It's fast enough that works. I think this move is great, but sort of situational and kind of risky. Down back 1, which is your scrubby plastic snake edge with this character. It's launch punishable, 26 frames to impact, so a lot of people are going to see and launch this, but a lot of the time they don't. It's a more awkward animation to react to than other like knockdown lows that are seeable because, Miguel has a lot of punching attacks with this arm. And by the time you realize that it's the down back one that is coming, maybe it's too late. So what you get after this is this thing. It's while standing 4, down for 1+2. The cabeza, which is I think it's called bajeza con cabeza, which is like a really cool move and name. But it's not massive. It's essentially like a shitty version of like a demo man kind of, but it's got more range. It's risky, but it does work. It's especially online, So don't dismiss it completely as just a shitty snake edge that doesn't even give you a full combo, right? It has good range. It's got consistent high crush. It works. Don't over-rely on it, though. You can also get a fast 4-4-2-1 after this, and that becomes important, especially when you're near the wall. If you're out here, you can get 4-4-2-2, and that will sometimes convert to a full wall splat, but when you're very close to the wall, the 4-4-2-1 is going to be the best damage, because this thing, the while standing 4, down 4, 1+2, won't connect because of the wall, right? So those are the different options that you have. When you have rage, you can use your rage drive to turn this into a full launcher, but we'll talk about that when we get to actually talking about the rage drive. Next, back 4, absolutely essential move. Like I said, some of the most important Miguel moves will be showing up in this section, so don't skip it. Back 4 is your go-to armor move. It's one of the better armor moves in this game, even though it is -14. It activates its armor quite quickly. It's got massive range. It's mid, and it's a wall bounce move, which means that you're going to do like all kinds of powerful wall combos with this. You could even say that when you're near the wall with Miguel, like your win condition or what you're trying to achieve is hitting with this move, right? And it's so prolific and so common in Miguel's wall game or wall splatting game that good opponents actually bait it. You will see them like run in and pretend that they're going to jab and stuff, and then they just wait and hang back looking for this and looking for the ability to block punish this. It's got a little bit of pushback, and you sometimes get away with not being punished with it. But it's worth throwing when you have, the sense that the opponent will swing. Maybe put yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage, get something blocked, then go into it. Backdash, allow them to come to you a little bit. It's going to wall bounce from like a really long range. It's just a fantastic move. Now, with the post wall bounce combo, if you have a lot of room, or even just a bit of room, you can do 1-2-4, one down forward, 1 savage 2 for a big chunk of damage. But if you're really close, usually you can do 1-2-4 and then go straight into savage 2 after the 4 right there. This is pretty consistent, but it sometimes drops. Miguel players who are already out there know exactly what I'm talking about. This sometimes just stops working and you mess up your combo, but it's fun to do, so you do it anyway. But you can do easy stuff like just converting with a normal standing 4, classic wall bounce stuff in this game. Obviously, you can, put them on the wall and do this wall combo as well. Whatever you prefer. There's a bunch of good stuff. If you have a lot of range, you can do forward 1+2 as well for big damage re-wall splat post bounce, right? But you use it in the open as well as just your go-to armor move. It's fantastic. This is a great move. Don't be intimidated by the -14 on block. Same as with this move in the hop kick. Miguel needs to take some pretty significant risks and this move to really capitalize on his package. But because you get such massive rewards for being successful, it means that that's actually the way you want to play. I've like less and less I worry about trying to play Miguel really safe and stay super compact. You can do if your opponent is amazing and reacts and ducks and everything, then you slow it down and you shut it down a little bit and you play more compact and you go even more into movement, sidestep, poke, low poke, you know. But if the match is a little bit more loose and you're playing a little bit more wild and it's kind of classic online, you can let loose more and more, take those big risks but also reap those big rewards. It's that kind of a character, but he's definitely not bad at keeping it, you know, simple either. Alright, other key moves. Down back to this move, the Vamos, I think it's called, which is another cool move name. This is great. It's a new key move for Miguel, like in this version. In Tekken 7, he didn't have this before, but I think it's become one of his like most prolific signature moves. It's one of your main carry tools and combos. They've given it better properties so that it works after every launch now. So with Miguel, launch down back 2 is kind of a staple. Also post low parry. But it's also just a really, really good mix-up mid because it's safe on block. It works really good for Oki. It knocks the opponent down for a good chunk of damage. It wall splats. You know, why not use this move? It goes under stuff as well. It's just fantastic, right? So if you're in a situation where you're not in Savage and you want to mix, I would actually recommend this as one of your main mid options. I think it works really well. You knock somebody down, you run up, you wait a little bit, you throw this, and you're going to catch them a lot of the time. I think it's fantastic. I should use it more outside combos. So it's like a mix-up mid, but outside stance. In stance, you have better stuff, and we're about to get to that. Right. Back forward one. So this is your sort of, you know, built-in evasion sort of tricky move. You know, a bunch of characters have versions of this. Feng's version is better. I think Horung's version is better. But this is fast. It's very evasive. It's chunky. You can think of it kind of as a backswing blow. I would apply this the same way I would apply, for example, Bob's backswing blow. I think that move is better than this as well. But, you know, you put yourself at a bit of disadvantage. You try and trick them into swinging. And then sometimes when you hit with this, you can actually get really powerful follow-ups as well. So it's a good move. But if you've watched a lot of my gameplay, you know that I actually don't apply this as much as I should. It's something that I guess I should try and sort of develop. So it's not a part of my playstyle with the character, but you know, if you've used backswing blows or built-in sidestep moves like this before, you know sort of how it works. But you can see the step is big, and yeah, this is probably a fantastic move that I should be using more. So that's why I'm mentioning it. Safe on block as well, as you can tell right here. Difficult to show, but -8, so there you go. Okay, your 1+2 throw with Miguel I want to mention as well. It's pretty unique for a 1+2 throw because most 1+2 throws in this game, you will knock the opponent down, get some sort of Oki, but Miguel actually keeps the opponent standing up, and he goes in with +5 and the option of holding forward for a stance transition, which is really unique and cool. But you can tell that Miguel like really wants to force the Savage mix-up, right? So he does it even post-throw without even knocking the opponent down. So this is kind of great. It also means that it becomes a fantastic tool for baiting rage arts. I think especially online, especially if you're playing in lower ranks, but even all the way to like the really higher ranks, Miguel is good at baiting rage arts because people will panic into rage art after this move on hit. Like right away, if you catch them with the counter hit, they're gonna rage art right here. I mean, like I say it out loud. I'm like rage art, and it happens, and then I win the round. And it's the same thing after this. They feel like they're at disadvantage, but they're standing up, and they're like, oh, it's time to rage art, but you just block it, you know. Or you go straight into a powerful Savage mix-up if you do want to swing, and you do one of your powerful Savage moves. So it's a really cool throw. You could argue that having a knockdown and good Oki would be better, but I think this is flavorful, fun, it's really great. And you know, Miguel is good at collecting plus frames, so I think he capitalizes on his throw quite well. He doesn't have a throw mix or anything, standard package, 1 throw, 2 throw, 1+2 throw. But against people who aren't consistently going to break everything, they do work. And then finally, I just want to shout out your full crouch package a little bit. So you have this full crouch down 4-4. It's slow, sort of seeable, and very launch punishable, but it's fast enough and big and chunky enough that it does scare people into getting mixed when you're down here. When it hits, you can get 4-4-2 series. The 4-4-2-2 can wall splat at some ranges, but otherwise, this thing is max damage. And if you have rage, you can actually crouch cancel and get a full combo, similar to the way you can get a full combo after down back 1 with rage. So that works, and then you have a good while standing 4, a good while standing 1. So your full crouch mix is not completely insignificant, And you have some good transitions, down 3, 4-4-2-2 down, stuff like that. I think even back 2-2 down, right? Yeah. So you have some full crouch action going there. Next paper. All right, it's finally time to talk about Savage. So now we're getting into the second half of the character, essentially, because Savage is a giant stance with a bunch of moves. I've compared it in the past to a Swiss Army knife. You become stationary, but you have all these tools, just folding out of Miguel that can do all kinds of things. A move for every occasion. I actually think you should keep it quite simple with Savage, 90% of the time. What you're trying to do most of the time is either apply manual this, apply manual this, maybe apply a manual this, maybe apply a manual this, and the rest is you doing Savage mix-ups, really. So let's talk first of all about the different important transition options that you have for accessing your Savage stance. So we've talked about manual Savage a lot already. I think it's very important. Again, bind it to a button and have a Savage button. But you also have down forward 1, down forward 1-1, +5, which is fantastic. Back 3, we haven't talked about this move yet, but this is really cool and great, especially for Oki. +7 on hit, +7 on block, so same frame data. They both go into Savage. If you score a counter hit, you can actually combo here. It's kind of difficult to react to and do, but it does exist, and it's massive damage. But you knock your opponent down, and then you run up and apply Oki. You do this. It's linear and they can roll out of the way, but if it hits, that's great. Counter hits, even better, but if they block it, +7 in Savage, super dangerous. So yeah, really quite good. And at +7, you have uninterruptible lows and everything. So this move is fantastic for that. I applied, after sideways movement, try and evade something and then set it up that way. So that works. You have forward 4, which is your long-range homing move. This you can use as a setup tool from a range. You can do this, let your opponent think that you've whiffed, but you're actually Savage transitioning, and then you throw another big homing kick. That is a counter hit launcher here. This is Savage 4. Can be a super cool setup tool for it, but this works. Didn't used to be transitionable, but it is now in Season 4, so that's cool. Down back 3 we've already mentioned, in my opinion, the most important move in your entire move list, and a great Savage transition as well. You also have the 1-2-4. We mentioned this when we talked about the jab string. 2-1, which is one of your fast block punishers, gives you a massive +7, which is great. Also used on block to set up, your Savage parry, which is pretty cool. And also your new 12-frame block punisher 4-2-1. This gives you a really strong mix-up situation. No knockdown, nothing guaranteed, but a really strong Savage situation right here. One of the better ones. So that's fantastic. All right, now those are the different ways you tend to transition with the character. Now let's talk about up forward 1. I don't know if I mentioned that in this section as well, but of course, up forward 1, great as well. Let's talk about how you actually mix when you are in the stance, and let's begin by talking about your mids. I think for mids you actually have a bunch of different options, but the main one that we've been using for a while now is the Savage 2. 16 frames, so not always uninterruptible, but still very fast, massive damage, safe on block, which is really great. and 32 damage. I think it's your like most powerful single hit move in your entire move list, with the exception of, you know, maybe this. So it's just really huge. It wall splats, it hits low, it's got great range. This is just a massive and very fun move to use. It's in your wall combos as well. But now I think we're increasingly going to use Savage up forward 3 for a Savage mix-up mid as well. Reason being, okay, first of all, 1 frame faster, which is great, really good range. But in the current patch, it also has counter-hit launching properties, which means that if you apply this, it sort of forces the opponent to respect and worry a little bit more about Savage and trying to challenge it. And when people are worrying about challenging your stance and they're standing there and looking at it, you create just a little bit of mental frame. Now everything is uninterruptible and your mix-up just becomes super strong and really fantastic, right? You also want to use faster options because you want to be uninterruptible sometimes, again, to force them to respect the stance. I think really one of the most underestimated and powerful moves that you have with this character is Savage back 1 and Savage back 1-4. So this is minus 10 on block, which is unfortunate, but not that bad. The move makes up for being, you know, slightly punishable by being fantastic. So it's a homing mid, which is so great. A lot of characters in this game, you know, Lily, Elisa, a bunch of characters, they really like to just try and evade your stance mix-up by walking to the side. So, you know, you transition in and it's time to mix, and then they're just gone. You know, you do something big and linear, and then you get launched from the side. This thing existing means that you can actually challenge that. It makes the stance tick in a big way, especially in these matchups. It's a natural string for 33. You get plus 8 after, which is great. And you even have counter hit properties on the second hit, right? So this is like ridiculously fantastic. But also notice the fact that it impacts at 14 frames, meaning that unlike this, which is 15, and this, which is 16, with the plus 4 that you get from, for example, down back 3 and up forward 1, this mid becomes uninterruptible, or at least is gonna trade with 10 frame moves, right? So it's really, really important and really good for that. It sort of mirrors Negan's Intimidation 1-2 a little bit in the fact that it's like the move that you have to throw sometimes to make them fear the stance. Otherwise, everything they can just kind of jab into. Of course, you know, they still have to worry because you have armor moves in Savage, you have powerful, very powerful high crush moves in Savage. But, you know, when you're just standard mixing, having this fast tool right here is really good. It has another extension, which is the 2. It's a launch punishable knockdown low. Really risky. I wouldn't recommend you use it too much, but you get that guaranteed for 2 series again, which means that on a floor break stage on Forgotten Realm, essentially, you're actually going to collect full combos for hitting with that, because the 4-4-2-1 is a floor break move. So that's really great. Again, keep them guessing, right? Now, another reason the Savage back 1 is so good is that your fastest Savage move, really, that you use a lot too, Savage 1-1, looks like this. It's a high. Look at the animation of this move and compare it to Savage back 1. This is Savage 1. This is Savage back 1. This is Savage 1. This is Savage back 1. This is Savage back 1. This is Savage 1. They look pretty much exactly the same. The one big difference being the homing sort of sweat beads or, you know, white sparkles that come off of this move. But that's really difficult for an opponent to look at and react to and, you know what it is when you're in the clutch. Basically meaning that it's going to be difficult for the opponent to know if you're applying a mid or applying a high here, which keeps them guessing, which makes them hesitate, which makes the mix-up more powerful, right? The 1-1, by the way, is a fantastic move. It's 12 frames, so it's like the fastest thing you have from the stance, essentially. It's big damage, it's natural, and when you get the hit, you can collect guaranteed stuff on the ground. You can get 46 here. This is not completely consistent, but it is sort of consistent. If you're on this side, it becomes worse. If you're on the other side, it becomes better. So, you know, not entirely consistent, but most of the time you can get guaranteed stuff after it, but it's also just there to really make them and force them to respect the stance. The 1-1 also has another extension, which is completely fantastic and one of my favorite moves with Miguel overall. This is Savage 1-4. It's natural, massive damage, it's high mid, which is great, and it's a wall bounce move. So, this move is just great. You go into Savage, and your fastest move that you have from the stance, if they try and challenge you, you hit them with this, and you get like huge combos at the wall, right? It's super, super good. And one of the reasons it's so fantastic is you can tell it's -10, but it's also got this huge pushback, and it very rarely, unless you're super close to the wall, ever gets punished. Like, I don't think I can count on one hand the times I've gotten punished for applying this move, which means that, it just adds so much safety, and it makes Savage so much scarier, especially when you're at a range where the pushback is still going to be in effect, nullifying potential block punishment, but the move will still wall bounce. So at this range right here, this move becomes incredible, and I will forego using back 4 and actually go into Savage and apply this instead for that reason. So, this is not because it's a high, not essentially part of the Savage mix-up, but it's sort of built in the sense that it's what's making the opponent eat the Savage mix-up, right? Another good mid that you do have is the Savage down forward one, which looks like this. And the reason you would use this, it's kind of short range. It sometimes loses to backdash, but it is +8 and loops back into Savage. So if you catch somebody with this in Savage, you get +8 and then another Savage mix-up, and you just keep on trucking, which is kind of fantastic. You also have Savage 3-3. I don't use this move, but it is pretty good. Maybe I should. It's a fast mid. It's hit confirmable, as you can tell right here. Really very hit confirmable and quite slow. Always natural, which is great. But if you mess it up, the second hit is a duckable high, so be careful, right? But you can do it as a mix-up mid. Impacts at 15. Hit confirm it, collect this, and I can see that being really quite powerful. So again, it's something that a lot of Miguel players do use and get a lot of mileage out of, but just the way I play the character, I don't. But maybe I should. Alright, we talked about Savage 1-1 and 1-4. You also have back 3. I think this is great. It's an armor move. People confuse it with back 4, but it's a completely different move, different leg. It's a safe on block armored high that gives you that knockdown situation for guaranteed damage again. So you can use it for keep out, or if you think your opponent is going to challenge Savage a lot, you can armor through and you can, get stuff here. So I think it's important to keep in mind. I also think that Savage 4 is great. Long range homing, safe on block high, but it's also a huge counter hit launcher. So if you can bait people into running in on Savage, you counter hit them with this, and you can also counter hit some people who are trying to step and then attack instead of having to eat the Savage mix-up, right? I would typically apply this move as it's homing, in mid instead, but this move is pretty great and fantastic. Okay, I think you can even sometimes get guaranteed stuff, but it's very situation dependent. So, I mean, there are a lot of other Savage moves that we haven't talked about. The back two has a launching punch parry built in. I don't use it that much, but if you want to use it, the go-to setup tool for this parry is actually 2-1 on block. If you get this blocked and you go into Savage on block at -4, like this, and then go straight into this, people will jab all day. You will punch parry, and you will get the launch situation. The launch that happens is the exact same as you get after counter hit steel pedal. So if you want to do a combo, all you have to do is, like you saw right there, a quick dash in and down back 2 to float, and then you can do your standard combos after that. So it is pretty good. And then you have, Savage forward 1+2, the headbutt +6, forces crouch on block, but it's a high. Don't really use it that much myself, but it is there. All kinds of crazy Savage moves. I'll also mention the down back 4 actually. So homing, launch, punishable, slow, knockdown low. If you think your opponent's going to jab, it works. If you're going into manual Savage at a range and trying to keep them out with this, it kind of works. Kind of like a keep out Snake Edge. Debatable how effective that really is against a good player, but when it connects, you do get the while standing 4 down for 1+2 combo, and it can be pretty good. So keep it in mind and be aware that it exists. And I think we might actually leave Savage there. I think with what I've told you about now, you can really apply the stance very effectively. But go into the move list, look at, you know, what else exists. He has a lot of moves, but not everything sees effective use in my opinion. But that's essentially it for Savage, I think. So there you go. Manual Savage, apply this low from a range, apply for Oki. Stay at a range and try and hunt for opportunities with this move. Again, especially for Oki. You can go into Manual Savage and throw these twos. It's especially good at the wall. It's safe on block, it's going to wall splat. And another thing, the new counter hit up for 3. Again, for whiff punishment, but also for Oki. Because if they swing and they do a get up kick, you're going to counter hit launch it. And you get huge damage for counter hit launching with this now. And a bunch of different really good transitions. So huge stance, important stance, big part of the character. All right, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I think we want to talk a bit about block punishment as well. It's not super important to me to do block punishment in a guide like this because you could just read a list of the block punishers and have them. But I think I have some stuff to say about the block punishers, so we'll go through them at least. So for standing, 10, 1-2 is all you have. It's short range, famously poor for that. It's got low damage. It's, you know, one of the weaker jab strings you have. Your extensions are pretty good though, and it's just an essential poking and pressure tool for the character that you have to use. But for a Punisher, it's sort of mediocre. 11, you have 2-1, 27 damage. Very strong Savage transition, but also poor range. Sort of, kind of exactly, the same range that you have on the 1-2, really. 12, you have a new move. That's great. More range, more damage. Powerful Savage mix-up after. So it's one of the better 12 frames. It doesn't knock down, but similar to the 1+2 throw, Miguel likes to force the mix-up, you know, sometimes instead of knocking down. So I think this is fine. You can use it for a quick whiff punisher, especially, you know, after a sidestep as well. But it is a high, so I don't use it much for that. But it is a really good punisher. 13, you have down forward 1-1 and down forward 1-2, which we've talked about previously. But you also have a bigger option, which is the 3-4. This is a big spin move, but it's also like a massive block punishing wall splat move, and the second fastest wall splat move you have after 4-2-1. But you can, you know, when you collect this after a hop kick at -13, it's really big. The Oki's pretty good. This move is kind of great. The second hit is a counter hit launcher, although the combo is kind of awkward that you have to do after. But yeah, it doesn't look, it feels heavy and slow, but it is a fast move and a really good punisher. So keep it in mind for 13. 14, you can do forward 1+2, the shove. It gives you the, you know, the classic guaranteed knockdown follow-ups when the legs are in the air. You know, punishing specifically -14 is kind of rare in this game, but it does happen. 15, you're going to start hop kicking. 16, the down 4-2-1, more damage, better range than the hop kick. And then 17, which is mainly used for like pushback moves, you get the Cyclone Slap. So that's essentially the package for standing block punishment. And they all have their uses. While standing, you have a really great while standing 4. Good range, 18 damage, classic +5. But it's enough that it's going to scare people when you're blocking a lot of low pokes clutch. But you have another really interesting option here, which is the while standing 1. I love this move. I use it all the time because it gives you +8 and Savage. So even though it doesn't have as much range as the while standing 4, when you can get this, the range isn't bad, by the way, and neither is the damage. The frame advantage is just so good, and it's only -3 on block. This is -6, right? So I think this is a great little while standing tool, and it's one of my preferred mids when I'm full crouch mixing. So if I go in with the forward 4-2-2 and I cancel with down and then I do this right away, I score a hit, and now I'm doing like a powerful mix-up right here. It's really kind of great. Then for 14, you have a while standing 2-4. So you do have a 14 frame while standing launcher, which is a huge asset in some matchups. It makes you able to punish things that some other characters can't. This launcher is good for its range, but the combo is awkward and kind of low damage. You have two options. You can do Manual Savage up for 3 and combo from there. And if you want to get a little bit more damage and maybe even a little bit more, no, they're both consistent, but you can sidestep and do this as well. And you know, the down for 1+2 for the ender right there, and you get 1 point more damage. You can get Savage Oki, you can break the floor. The up forward 3 transition right here is, it looks like this. The whole combo is what you use if you're trying to convert to the wall or stuff and stuff like that. But you're pretty much never going to get really 60 damage or more off of this. But you do have the speed, the impact speed, and the good range to make up for that. It is duckable high, the extension, so you can get launched for using this, and you're also punishable on block. So you know, insult to injury with this launcher. But it does work. And then at -15, of course, you can hop kick from crouch because up forward inputs cancel crouch in this game. So you do have that option as well if you want to get more damage and a better launcher after blocking, you know, a big low. And that's essentially it for your different block punishers. Next, I think we're going to talk a little bit about Oki with this character. I think it's another area where he kind of excels, and we've mentioned most of the really good moves so far, but let's dedicate a section to talking a little bit about it. So, first of all, when your opponent is knocked down, your down 3 turns into your stomp. I love the fact that it's a down 3 input and not a 3+4 input. It's easier to access. It's got good range, big damage. It's fantastic. So a lot of situations when you knock down with Miguel, you can get this guaranteed. And I see a lot of people who are like newer to the character, they always want to apply down 3+4, which is your steel pedal pancake flip instead, because they're so used to steel pedals, that pancake flip being so good in this game, and they kind of are. But if you look at this situation, yeah, I flip him around, but I knock him away, so I don't get much for follow-ups, and the damage is quite a lot weaker. I can see this being better when you have the wall, though, and the knockaway doesn't happen as much. But I'm a big fan of the stomp for these knockdown situations. If I'm trying to hit the opponent and they're staying on the ground, I'm usually stomping, or I'm going into manual savage and I'm applying this because it's also a ground hitting mid and a pancake flip move. So I'm actually not that much of a steel pedal boy myself, but a lot of people are. Again, it comes down to playstyle, but that's essentially your loadout for when it comes to hitting a grounded opponent. You can stomp them with a down 3, you can flip with steel pedal, you can flip with this move, and then again your fantastic low pokes that we started the guide with, this thing, you know, even this thing, they do hit grounded, so you can hunt them with these fantastic lows, and even add the extension to the down back 3, and if they're trying to get up, sometimes you will get a double hit and even convert to a cheeky wall situation. So you're pretty good at hitting a grounded opponent, really. For like mids, this thing is great. Doesn't hit grounded, that would be kind of broken at this point, but it will counter hit them for big damage, and it's a safe mid, so I think it's kind of great. I also like to apply Savage 2, and like I've mentioned, if you're trying to bait out get up kicks and bad get up options, staying out here, manually going into Savage and applying Savage down 4-2 or Savage down back 3, that's really good as well. And you can even do the March of Tyranny. The March of Tyranny, this is a low that I should have mentioned in the Savage Mix section. We didn't really talk about Savage lows yet because we've talked so much about down back 3, but I'll mention it here. This is a fast uninterruptible low that you do have at 15 frames, or not uninterruptible, it's natural. You get both hits for 25 damage, but it is launch punishable if they do catch it. So if you want your fastest low for Savage for mixing, use this over down back 3, because down back 3 is 19 frames to impact, and so interruptible actually in most situations where you are creating advantage and then trying to mix from Savage. So this move is like ridiculously good, but for mixing it's overestimated by the opponent, and that's why it works as well as it does. If we're talking a little bit about specifically wall, let's go to restart position wall here. A bit about wall Oki. There's essentially one other move that we need to mention here, and it's the forward 3-4. And this is also fantastic wall splatting tool. It's a hit confirmable mid string that you can use to wake people up or just when they're near the wall. And if you hit confirm it properly, you will get it will be completely safe, and you can get great high damage wall splats. But if it gets blocked, it's minus 15 and launch punishable, so you need to do the hit confirm. It's one of those where you have to practice the hit confirm, but if you do and you actually apply this, I sometimes do, rarely, but I sometimes do, and it like feels really good because you know that you're playing good Tekken when you're applying a good hit confirm on a move like this. And a bunch of characters have similar stuff. Back 4-4 from Zafina. You never use that, but you should. Intimidation 1-2 from Negan at the wall. Things like that. Another Oki tool that I will mention, because I have no other place to put it, is this thing. It's a new move that they've given to Miguel, and we kind of laughed at it when it came out, because why would we want a 27 frame to impact giant low that is launch punishable and doesn't even give a combo on normal hit? It needs to counter hit to launch. Well, I think it has a little bit of niche application as an Oki tool because I can run into its sort of range like that, and as the opponent is getting up, apply this. It's not going to hit grounded opponents, but it is going to hit people who are rolling and who are standing up. And if you get a counter hit, it's one of the highest damage counter launchers that you have, and it is homing. So, it does work, but it's very slow and very risky. So, try and build up an awareness for when it's time to throw this. But if you completely ignore it and never apply it at all, that's absolutely fine as well. I don't think it's necessary for the character at all. You'd probably rather do this anyway, right? When we're at the wall, let's mention, your key wall splatting moves. We've talked about this. We've talked about the shove, the 4-4-2 series, the hit confirmable forward 3. Anything else? The 3-4, the block punisher, the 4-2-1, the 12 frame block punisher as well. So really good splats, really overall. And then of course your fantastic bounce moves, the back 4, the armored savage back 3, and the savage 1-4. The savage back 3 of course is not a bounce move, but it is armored. And you can use it, to trick them into thinking that you're actually applying back 4. So he's really good. Really good at wall splatting, and he's really good at Oki, and he's good at wall Oki. So with Miguel, you're kind of doing that thing where you're moving around, poking around, trying to look for big stuff, and then when you get it, it's like time to try and do a massive combo, and then do even more massive stuff for the post combo Oki, and then maybe close up the round that way. He's a high damage character, and he loves his damage. I think finally we should talk a little bit about Rage and your Rage drive. Your Rage art is generic, apart from the fact that it has a better range than most other Rage arts. It also looks better and is cooler than most other Rage arts. I think it's probably my favorite one in the game in terms of what it does. I love the animation and everything, even though it's slow and long and drawn out, which isn't fantastic because we don't love watching cinematics when we're playing fighting games. The range drive is a little bit more interesting though. It's not known for being great, but it's not shitty either in my opinion. So this is a double spin launcher. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when you launch, you can spin your opponent and then do this, and it's going to spin again, as you can tell right there, which means that you can spin twice in one combo with Rage. It means that you can create ridiculously long combos with the character. I mean, I could launch here, spin my opponent, break like that, do a Rage drive, spin again, just keep on going. You can do really long combos with it, so it's pretty good for that. When it hits normally, or when it gets blocked, first of all, you get +3. It pushes the opponent back really far, but at the wall, you have +3 and you can mix right away, which is super scary. A lot of people don't know about the minus frame, so they swing here and you can get guaranteed stuff. You can counter hit with back 1, for example, which is great. But when it hits normally, it's a long range, not super long range, but kind of long range, 17 frame normal hit launcher, and again you can double spin, right, which is really great. So the Rage drive has application, and you will want to use it when you have access to Rage. It's just known for being kind of wonky and not super reliable. I mentioned earlier in the guide that You can use the Rage Drive to turn some Miguel moves into launchers that wouldn't normally be launchers. And the two main ones are essentially down back one. We talked about this move earlier. But the way you turn this into a launcher is you do the down back one, then you do the while standing 4, and then you do the Rage Drive. And as you can tell, turns it into a full combo. The damage isn't huge. Keep in mind that, you know, it is a double spin, so you're spinning, but then you can spin again. That is what allows you to get 60 plus off of this. And the other move is, I remember when I talked about this full crouch low, you can actually crouch cancel if you're fast right here. Like that, and you can turn that into a launcher as well. So I'm crouch canceling by tapping up. It's sort of a lost art. We used to crouch cancel all the time in Tag 2. In 7, it doesn't happen that much anymore. But that can turn it into a really big launcher as well, which can be pretty good. So keep your Rage Art or your Rage Drive in mind when you're comboing. But if you're just trying to maximize damage, I think for the most part, do a long combo and then end with the Rage Art if you're out in the open, because your main spin move in your standard combo that you're usually doing is 3-4, and this has a really long recovery, and it means that running in after it really deep and getting the Rage Art is going to be kind of hard. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to modify your combo, and you're going to want to spin with either down forward 2-2 or forward 2-1 instead, which you can do. It's going to work absolutely fine like that. I know Sephi Black likes to do that. The other like main combo that I do, the standard classic old Miguel, looks like that, and those are a little bit better for that if you're going to do these long combos with a late Rage Drive, right? But for the most part, I'm either trying to use the Rage Drive to turn one of those cheeky lows into combos, or I'm throwing it, just looking for a kind of like a whiff punisher, looking for a stray launch, and it works for that, or creating that wall pressure that I showed you earlier, because the pushback is nullified, allowing me to work with +3. A lot of opponents don't know about the frame data, and it can give you a turnaround opportunity at the wall as well. So we've talked about pretty much everything I wanted to say about Miguel, except for combos, really. And I don't want to really do combos in these long guides, because I feel like, you know, those are things where you can just look at a fantastic video that is compiling combos, right? So I recommend that you do that. There are, you know, fantastic channels for that. Legendary Mihawk is one of them, but there are plenty of others. But for the most part, you're launching and you're doing the down back 2, and it sort of all spawns from there. You go into Savage off of your down forward 1, and then you have all kinds of carry options and conversion tools. But if you want to learn these combos, instead of me sitting here for like another 30 minutes showing you all the different options, go look at some of those compilations, maybe at some gameplay, maybe at some of my own gameplay if you want to see how I combo with the character, and you're going to find great reliable options that you can have fun practicing, you know, in practice mode when you're learning the character. And again, instead of me like showing them once with notations on the screen and going through everything, you're going to want to look at the combo in parts and, you know, pause it, go back. And I think compilation is just sort of a more organic and better tool for doing that, instead of sitting here and, you know, just going through it. That's a wall combo, by the way, 1-2, 1+2. But that's in those videos. So I think I'm about ready to wrap this up. I had a lot of fun doing this. You can tell I'm losing my voice. I'm gonna, as soon as I stop recording, I'm gonna be like, oh god, I forgot to mention this thing. That always happens. But I think for the most part, I gave you what you need, and I think I'm satisfied with what we went through. To summarize, Miguel, good movement, good backdash, but don't obsess about creating space. Try and stay at an effective range, or try and be close. Think more about sidestepping than you would with your average character. Maybe do more sidestepping sort of instead of backdashing sometimes. Apply a lot of aggressive pokes. Keep your opponent guessing by mixing up your different extensions. Try and create opportunities by tying those things together with, you know, movement. And then sometimes capitalize with big hop kicks, big launchers, big damage, and you know, keep forcing the Savage mix-up. Makes, you know, this low and this low with all the fantastic mids that I showed you. Keep in mind that you're going to have to use your homing move, so the back 2-2, and I think the other main one is the Savage back 1-4, or just back one by itself, to neutralize people who step a lot. And if you're playing, because you can be weak against that, and the other weak matchup you have strong keep out characters and Mishumas, don't forget about this down 3, because it's going to work. It doesn't look like much, but it sort of enables you to actually win in those matchups. And apart from that, just throw a lot of down back 3. It's one of the best low pokes ever. Sometimes go into Savage, sometimes don't. Poke, step, poke, poke again, do a jab string, throw one of these. Keep it moving, keep mixing it up, keep them guessing, and then just capitalize with big damage when you get the opportunity. And, you know, push them into the corners and near the wall when you can, because even though you have good movement and you can do well on a wall stage, I think you much prefer working with the wall when you're Miguel, especially because your Oki is really fantastic. You can re-wall splat, you can apply really savage Oki. It's savage whether you're using savage stance or not, you know. And final thing, that savage button, it really will help you. If it feels unnatural in the beginning, try and use it a lot, because when you're starting to get these really fast moves out, it's going to make a big difference. So there we go. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, the last full guide for Miguel, at least for this version of the game, but I think we'll see more of him in future games, and I'll be there making videos on him then as well. Can't wait to see what he's going to be like in, Tekken 8. If he shows up, I think he will. But there are still other characters I love to play and talk about that I haven't done for Season 4, so it's definitely not the last character guide, just maybe the last one for Miguel, right? Thank you so much for all the amazing support on the channel. And yeah, let's just wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys again very soon.